Hello and welcome to the eCom Life podcast. I'm sorry we haven't been around for a little while. The Christmas period was a little busy, as I'm sure it was for the rest of you during the in the e-commerce world. I'm joined by some friends this week from 5874 for the first time. I've got Ben Palmer, who's our digital director, and I've got Luke Osborne, who's our commercial director. We thought we'd kind of take the first podcast of this year and go a bit relaxed, talk about a couple of things that where we deal with, and probably, I mean, ultimately picking up one of the biggest questions that we get asked around our process and where we go to and how we start projects, and that mainly being discovery. What does it mean? Why do we do it? Why do we insist on it? Because we don't actually take on a project at 58 without discovery. So, I mean, I guess with that in mind, guys, before we get started, why don't you introduce yourselves? I guess, Ben, let's pick on you first. Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, where you've been, what you've been up to? Keep it clean if you can, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so yeah, my name is Ben Palmer. I'm the digital director at 5874. Where have I been? Other side of the world, I think, is a good starting point, really. Probably comes up a bit too often, but impressive. I've been in Japan for 16 years. I left after university. My university course was in interactive digital art and design. It was known as MLA back then. And I just had a very short time doing a bit of e-learning before I thought I'd go and live in another country. And I just thought I'd go to check it out. And yeah, 16 years later, I was still there. During my time there, I had my own digital agency, which is still happening over there, and experience of market entry. So came back to the UK, be around my family, who'd finally get to see me after that time and meet my son, and joined 58 into the world of more into e-commerce and digital solutions. So that's where I'm from. Yeah.
Excellent. Sounds good. I was going to say part of the irony about that was you came back from Japan and then promptly got locked down, didn't you? Which was some of the irony. But to see you probably weren't any closer to your family than you were before. So cool. And Luke, I guess with that in mind, why don't you give us a bit about you, where you've been, where you fit in at 58?
Yeah, absolutely. So Luke Osborne, commercial director, 58. My background isn't quite as interesting as Ben's. I think the furthest I've kind of travelled work-wise is Birmingham. So yeah, that's kind of how I've kind of moved around, I suppose. My sort of agency background is a multitude of different platforms, whether it be Magento, Shopify, and now obviously BigCommerce. Roughly sort of 5 years of eCom digital agent experience, and yeah, work with clients of all shapes and sizes, whether it be sort of ambitious startups or complete enterprise clients as well. So yeah, it's a fast-paced world, and yeah, a world I really enjoy sort of working in.
Cool. All right. Thanks. Thanks, Luke. I mean, I guess with that in mind, Luke, and while you've got the mic, so to speak, I appreciate we've all got it over Zoom, but while you've got the mic, you're the one that leads the initial discussions with clients, the sales cycle, as it were. So, how does discovery come about? What is it? Why does it matter? And I guess from a kind of, I suppose, scoping period, and how do we approach that?
So I think that, I mean, firstly, discovery shouldn't be a new concept to any kind of merchant looking to work with an agency. I've worked with agencies that have approached discovery in different ways in the past, and I think that kind of the way we approach things is probably the clearest process that I've personally worked with. I think discovery to a merchant is the agency understanding their needs and ultimate objectives of the actual overall goal. I think a lot of agencies will rely on that initial brief to form part of that discovery, but in my mind, I don't feel like a brief is discovery. A brief is very much it's almost a prompt to the agency to say, listen guys, these are our goals, these are our objectives, this is what we need you to hit within our project. And then I think that it's the agency's responsibility to then take that brief and say, okay guys, we understand that you want to do X, Y, and Z. However, our approach to this would be this. And that, for me, is what discovery is. Discovery is, the foundations of any successful project. It's a reference for clients. It's a reference for the agency to look at and go, actually, this is the roadmap to success, and this is how we're going to get there. And I think that when we discuss discovery with a lot of clients, I think they're occasionally pessimistic because of, I guess, previous agency experience, because some discoveries, for example, with other agencies aren't a paid for service. You know, it's a service that is just there for the agency to give clients at least a small understanding of where the project might go. But yeah, I mean, to ultimately do discovery well, it's paid for service. You know, it's weeks where the agency will sit down with you and map out what your goals and objectives are, and ultimately how you're going to work together.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, I would agree with you on all of that, because we kind of designed the system between us, didn't we? I mean, it kind of goes. It's consultative, it's educational, it's pulling in some of our reams of experience. We just sat on this call here. We've got over 50 years of eCom experience between us, and that's working across a variety of sectors as well. Just thinking around, I mean, in terms of the paying for it part, is that something that, I mean, it's the value, and do people understand that value from the outset?
I think there's definitely an education piece required there. I think that once you can kind of, I guess, educate the merchant on actually the value of discovery and the level of detail that we go to in discovery, I think that's when the actual value itself, I actually think you get a lot for your money, especially with the typical kind of costs that we propose to a lot of our clients. And if anything else, you know, discovery has a chance to be provocative. I think that 5/8 as an agency is great at doing that, and I think that, you know, the guys we've got on the call now, Rupert and Ben, you know, you guys are great at being provocative with clients. You know, clients may not necessarily think a certain way, but our job really is to make them think of every single avenue. And discovery should be exactly that. It's as much about us giving the client what we can do as much as what their sort of goals are with their project.
Yeah, I mean, Ben, I guess this kind of tees me up to one of your favourite lines. What is it? You only, I won't say it for you. You only know what you know, or so. What's your phrase you use there?
I don't know. That came out spontaneously, I think. It's kind of something like, you only know what you know, or you think you know. I prefer a bit of Socrates of, you know, all I know is I know nothing, personally. But it's that idea is you do have people who are confident going in, who might have quite a bit of experience with their system, so they put together an RFP, and it's like, hey, this is what we want, we know we want this, and you kind of think, well, actually, if I ask you the right questions about it, maybe you're going to realize there's some things you haven't thought of, and that's really valuable, and that's really valuable in anything. And somebody, I think they obviously have that in psychology as well, don't they? But it's like a counselor in a way talks with that person, and it actually reveals, hang on a minute, I didn't realize I thought like that. Oh wow. And that happens in, you know, in discovery, as well as probably in other industries as well.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I know we have been referred to as shrinks at times. People feel like they're coming to sit on the couch a little bit, and I suppose it is when you get that far, and it's around, because they may have a particular ERP that they think they're stuck on and they can't move out of it, but they're looking to move across things. I mean, I've done this long enough now to know that where they think they're going to start isn't where they're going to end up, and that's a key part to it. So, I mean, I guess, Ben, just give us a snippet in terms of the level of detail that your solutions team goes into on these. I mean, you know, let's keep it light. We're on a podcast. We don't need to dive into the really heavy detail, but give us a peek behind the curtain.
Okay, well, it is difficult to decide how to go into detail on it, but let's say we try to take the spread of everything that we see in an e-commerce operation, but you start at the high level to understand what the needs of the project are, the requirements and dependencies, any challenges that people think there might be as well, but also getting those kind of KPIs out of somebody early on is very important, and people don't think it is, and you start to find out actually as you work through the project, meeting these goals is really what we're trying to do and how we get there. But then we look at the technical side, and we go into the architecture and what their current e-commerce system in terms of system and how pieces and components fit together and make it work, but also what's happening in the store. You talk about pain points and you get that list of functionality, and often people stop there, and that's a thing that as well, that's part of it. We like to move into talking about the brand as well, and how, whether it's a store, even a website or anything, conveys its brand. What are those values? It all starts to loop back in. And what you find in discovery is things come back up that you've already discussed, but they're supposed to, and they're like little mini circles that come back and kind of revitalize themselves each time. As we move into UX, because we go through the UX with the client as well, often priorities within the store, the types of customers that should be using it, which then leads us into wireframes. And from wireframes, you actually find more functionality that they may think they want or don't want, or becomes appropriate from everything else that's discussed. Actually, this thing becomes really relevant, but also by giving a level of visualization as well, which comes out of the wireframes, it helps a client at that point as well to be able to understand it more, because they can kind of see it, which is also why we've more recently anyway, but we put in a look and feel, which is a very light design, but it's a full design, but it's just to give that sense of realness to everything everybody's talked about. It really allows people to see it, how it could look as well, takes the mind a little further. And then after that, we're moving into marketing and how all the marketing and external systems fit together as well, and how we might track and analyze a customer, which also loops background into, well, what do you want on the store? Because if you're doing, data-driven research, that's actually illustrating as well what could be beneficial. So you have all of that at the end, but then when there's still some more discovery involved, which is coming back to the client with, what were the important parts that we've come after we've talked about everything? Where should we focus? Then we get into the nitty-gritty and the details of specific points to finally kind of put that all together into a solution that's collaborative with them. So at the end of it, there is a rather excessive presentation. I think I've done theatre and I've been in a band, but that's the longest I've ever spoken as a monologue in my life. But it lays out everything in detail, so everybody's 100% clear and it's agreed, and there's that level of confirmation between you and the agency that you're exactly on the same page. So when you do execute, you know what you're getting. And I think a problem with non-discovery, or when it's been baked into a project in advance, or it's just from an RFP, it's so open to misinterpretation, and that's where you get problems with the requirements aren't correctly fulfilled. It goes out of, like timelines overdue, or there's dissatisfaction because it's not exactly what the person wanted. And often, it's not necessarily at the fault of either party, it's the fault of the process. Because, like I said, I go back to my Japanese background. I know how easy it is to misinterpret what somebody says to you in a foreign language. And that's just simple. It's language, or even another culture who speak the same language. Well, in expat land. It's so easy to get that wrong. So when you're just reading some text and it's a very complex subject, it's very sort of, from an agency's point of view, a bit fortuitous to go off and think, oh yeah, I know exactly what the client means. Let's just build it, lads. And be confused when maybe it's not quite exactly what somebody wanted. So there's that due diligence to it, I think, on behalf of the agency as well, to make sure what you're going to deliver is exactly what the person's asked for. And that's how I kind of see it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. There was a few things going through my mind while you were talking there. I mean, I know there was a very funny Twitter video that was going around the other week that we shared internally in our chat columns, wasn't there, around UX. And there was a square hole, and everything went through the square hole. But that's part of the irony of the English language and requirements and user stories. And if they're not detailed enough, then they're up for interpretation. And that's the mother of all, isn't it? It's where it goes wrong. And I mean, I know the thing I always hate is the can you just comment, and this can run across anything in life. It can run across refurbishing a house, buying a car, applying for a job, or in this instance building a new e-commerce architecture. But could you just move that wall? Well, if we'd have found it at the start and we'd have planned, then yes, absolutely. And I guess that's I know we refer to architect drawings before you give them to your builder, and planning the drainage and all the rest of it. And it works well. I mean, look, just flicking back to you for a second there. When we're in that initial scoping period, how much are you talking to our prospective customers at that point about the future, or is it very much that initial phase of what they're looking like? Are you looking to talk about a roadmap and where they can potentially take things?
Yeah, I think that's really important, and I think that's what kind of separates premium agencies from reactive agencies. I like to call them. So most reputable agencies, or most agencies of a certain success, can build a site just based on a brief. That's not the hard part. The hard part is asking the right questions and kind of working out where a client wants to get to, because as you mentioned there, you kind of need to know what the future of success looks like for the merchant, because there might be something at day one that we need to implement to kind of factor that into things. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that to me is the key reason why 5/8 are a premium agency, and that's the key reason why a lot of premium agencies of a similar size and sort of similar expertise excel versus their competitors. It's because you're asking those provocative questions, and you want to work with a client long term. I mean, and that's another important part to it, right? You don't just look at the client and go, okay, guys, yeah, we can deliver this project in 3 weeks. Here's the keys, goodbye. It just doesn't work like that, especially for 5/8 as an agency. So for us to kind of map out what the future success looks like also allows us to make sure that we've got a roadmap to success with the client and what a long-term sustainable relationship looks like.
Yeah, I mean, that's sounding a lot like partnership rather than a traditional client-supply relationship.
Absolutely.
How do you find that goes in with discovery? And I know, Ben, I mean, you lead the solutions team, so I mean, you're involved in things all the way across the life cycle of clients at 5/8, whether it's debugging something that went wrong on an integration layer or whatever. How does that partnership play into it and that client relationship?
In terms of the discovery?
Yeah, so in terms of discovery, who's involved, are there different layers of relationships that are in there, and how do you really get under the covers of things?
Well, I think in all organizations as well, there's always relationships. I think one of my previous business partners, a famous quote of one of those clients was, I think all business is relationships or something, which was an interesting one, but it meant you can go in there and talk this and that. That's great, but not necessarily having a rapport from the sense of a sales, sorry, Luke, but that kind of image,
No, I know what you mean.
that Wall Street image, you look like a rapport, a rapport, but the rapport where the communication's very clear. So within that discovery process as well, there's a relationship that's built up, that being able to express ideas and comfortably between each other, and have that maybe more, slowly as it progresses as well, becomes more relaxed and open as well, that you can really kind of get into the questions that maybe if it was more just initial, hey, how's it going? This is the RFP, here's a project, let's get on with it. I'll pop around, get some information out of you. You're not really kind of getting a kind of closeness of communication where it's, I guess, more like within a team or a trainer. I guess I always think like if that fitness trainer idea is useful as well to imagine as well, where you'd only know what you know. Like if I like my sports and everything, and I try different training things, but then I think I know what I'm doing. I probably don't. And I meet some goals out of it, but I think we've had that with, again, some previous friends and stuff, and then we went actually and talked to someone who knew what they were doing, and you had that incredible, well, this guy really gets it, and then he taught you something you didn't know, but at the same time as well, how they did it, that relationship was built and that trust was built as well over that time, that there's that relationship there that you can always be kind of consulting with the person afterwards. And I think that also flows through within the discovery and production, even during that production time and beyond, because you've established that kind of open communication and trust and sort of relationship, the person always interested in new things that you can do together, because you've both felt this, you've both reached the goal. There's those goals that you're trying to succeed that Luke spoke about, where you get that idea. We're not just building the thing for you. We've understood what your goal is and what you're trying to achieve. We're helping you to try to achieve that. Great. We've got to step one. Well, we got to step one together. Great. How do we get to step two? Hey, we're with you on that. Let's do it. And I think that gets built much more over a discovery process than it does when it's a little more sort of separated.
Definitely. It's a term that gets thrown around the industry quite a lot as well. Do you want us to be an extension of your team? Whether or not that you're actually an extension of the team is a different matter, but I think that by digging into what the goals and objectives are over a long period of time and actually getting in the weeds of what the business looks like, you can only truly be an extension of someone's team if you have the same or at least similar knowledge of what business processes are, what their pain points are, That's how you're going to be able to challenge people on a day-to-day basis about how to improve things. That's a true extension of your team in my eyes.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think the hardest thing about all of that is it's easy to give good news, right? So there's something that the client, the merchant's got their heart set on something and it working in a particular way. And there are times where, and Ben, I've been there when you and I have had to deliver, it's not going to work in that particular way. You just simply can't do it. But if you do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you'll get it to where you want it to be. And having that trust, that relationship, that you can talk open and honestly about those things, and it might not just be cost, it might be timelines. I mean, I know we've just finished up a discovery period with a company in Germany where they needed a site live for May the 1st, and there were some fairly tight timelines and some constrictions around it, and it's not gone ahead because of the timelines, and that's the open and honest truth about that, and it'll be reimagined as something else a bit later, but it's those key parts. And I guess with that in mind, just thinking around timelines, how from both of your experiences, timelines and costs that come out of discovery. I mean, yeah, are they actually realistic? Where are we going to that? What's the desire out of that, Ben? I know we're talking numbers, we're talking timelines. Are we stuck to in terms of where we go to with that?
I think it's flexible, to be fair. I think there's two ways of looking at it as well. There's one, these are all your requirements. This is the perfect picture of what you want. Okay, here's realistically what it's going to cost to get there and what the timeline looks like for that. And they are accurate. But at the same time, as we always know, there are dependencies, or we have this deadline and something has to be done for here. And you can say, great, well, out of all the things that we've talked about, and we understand what we've decided our priorities are based on your goals, and you can bring it all back round again, yeah? And then say, what's feasible to strip out? And we kind of will know, we will both know by that point, and we can say, well, if we're comfortable taking this out, you can get to here for this, or it might be about a budget constraint. That's fine. Some people might come in and say, look, we want, you know, the giant Hollywood ending and everything, but we know that we're not having the budget for that. But out of all the things, again, we've talked about, which gets us closest to the thing that we want within that amount? And then we can say, okay, great, let's put this together and put all the really premium things that you want, you know, priority things that you want together to get as close to that as possible. And sure, if down the line, then it's successful, you're going to be able to kind of get closer and closer to that final goal. So yeah, it's a journey and there's a final goal, but you're not having to get there the first time. And that's with anything. It's not like, well, you know, I'm going to start playing football in the Premier League once I come out of, you know, college. It's not, you know, it doesn't happen. Or I'm just going to burst into fluent Japanese. It doesn't happen. You've got to, on everything, you've got to work your way through it. And then I think when we talk with the clients as well, we can position what comes out in the final package. Want to be realistic, but it's understood as being realistic, but it also achieves it's achieving what they're asking for, which is the most important. And that's why we're working together. I think without a discovery, it's two easy things that can happen. Is one, someone promises everything and then just goes, great, and then puts a thing called planning for 2 weeks in the front of your project plan. No digital agencies I know have ever done that to their clients in Tokyo at all, and landed on our doorstep. Right, so that used to be quite common, you know, and that's the thing to be aware of. So, or be wary of. So, almost as a client, you don't want that. You kind of do want the discovery, because you've got to be a little bit wary of that. It's not realistic to make a project plan without a decent amount of investigation anymore. I think one thing I wanted to touch on is we talked about collectively our e-commerce experience, but if you think about the web, was it 30 years old, 1990s maybe? E-commerce really kicked off 10 years later. That's a young industry.
Yeah, something like that. I was about to say it's making me feel old because I was involved in most of that, but yeah.
Right. But if you think about established industries, big, if it's construction companies or engineering, those sort of levels of consultancy or pre-planning are accepted and normal. And I think it just as you said, anyone can throw up a website. Well, you can, sure. Especially back in the day, can't we? Hey? When it was a lot more simple, but it's so much more complex now. You know, the internet has matured so much, digital has matured so much. It's so complicated. It deserves to be considered on that same kind of par of these other industries. And I think there has been a transition where historically you haven't had these discoveries because it never was quite that complex, or were not given the same appreciation. And now it clearly is, but there's a lot of people who haven't quite got there yet. But it's simply saying, do you realize how complex everything's got and what we're doing here? It's not just quite that simple anymore. It really isn't. And that's why it's necessary.
Yeah, so let me tee up another one, because it's kind of where you're going to with some of that. So we're in a, and it's partially ties into discovery. I think I know it's some of the challenges that I know that Luke gets, but I can log on to bigcommerce.com. I can put my credit card in this afternoon. I can buy a theme off the marketplace. I can be running tonight, and I'm going to own the world tomorrow. Why is that a bad idea? Why won't it work? Why can't it just work for me?
Depends what you want. If you just want to have a store that's all right and you can sell something on, maybe, because you still got to set up your payment processes and get all that right. There you go. You got to get the right contract in there. And if you want people to navigate your store properly and buy something, I mean, you can do that. I think there's been countless ones where I could say, if it's terms of I'm going to start my blogging career, or I'm going to end up as a YouTube superstar, because I can just make a video and upload it and I'll have 1 million views by next, because you won't. Nobody's just the build it and they will come mentality as well. You have, you can have your great idea and download a theme and stick it on a content management system as well. But is anyone, who's going to visit it? What they're going to do when they get there? There's all these questions, and it never, it's kind of like a bit like a rock band kind of concept as well. There's out of all the rock bands, there's probably like 99.99999% you're ever going to see it. Glastonbury or Phoenix Festival these days, or Make It Big, Fuji Rock in my case, because if you can just get something and whack it out, that is what you get. But the problem is the parity on that. I think for web designers as well, one idea, well, I don't know if it's on the right tangent, but we used to look at the internet and you'd always see the world's best site award or whatever and think, oh wow, my god, how would we, because you only ever see the best.
Yeah.
So it looks like you can do that. It's like, yeah, I'll just go onto a store, download a theme, it will look wonderful, and off we go. And you want to say, okay, well, go. You don't want to say go on then, but secretly, we'll go on then, see what happens. And yeah, they're much more complicated. And if you're looking at something, premium, and you want something of quality, it's across, and it's an analogy, it's across anything. If you just went and tried to make it your own suit and go to a wedding in it, unless you've already got you're a professional at it, or you bought something very cheap, it's likely to break. If you have that high quality thing, you're getting high quality in most cases for that purpose. You say, oh, I could just go and climb Everest. I could just get some boots and a rucksack and a husky or something and climb up it. You're probably dead.
I'm not sure there's huskies on Everest, but yeah, I'd say
no. Maybe there are.
Yeah. I was going to say the one thing that was making me laugh through that was, or even put up a podcast. But hey, we're having a go, aren't we? So,
well, the other part I'd say to that is, you have to also start somewhere and go, get it done. I think that's a nice little comment, and I'm not sure if it goes for this, but it's been going around. It's going around sort of the internet around people in lockdown and everything, and it's just called "Do It Badly," and it's more about a mental wellness thing. It's just don't be too hung up if you haven't done it before to do it. So you need to get off the blocks to start with to do it. But at the same time, if you've got someone who knows what they're doing, and you can get a teacher to show you how to do it as well, or even if you think someone who's a peer or has that level of expertise, you're always, you're going to get better.
I think that's such a good point. It was something I was just considering about, because I realised we've just sort of partially bagged the principle of going onto the theme marketplace and buying a theme and stuff like that. But that's absolutely got a place, depending on where you are in your world. But I think the key thing that we're saying here is research and planning. right? And you wouldn't try and write an essay without at least having a plan before you started. You wouldn't drive to Cornwall without at least considering what route you were going to take from home and all the rest of it. And so why would you do it? Why would you do it any differently in any other life? So I mean, I guess, Luke, with that in mind, and I suppose everything we've spoken about here, so there's a lot on a relationship here. I know your role and your life at 5/8 is selling our skill set and our personality. If you could give someone 3 or 4 tips about agency selection, where to start with all of that, how would you go about that?
I would firstly say don't buy into the marketing hype. I mean, it's ironic that I'm saying it, as you know, we're partly a marketing agency as well, but you know, don't just buy into what you see on the face of things. I think that what's really important is that people get an agency that's right for them. And just because an agency is large, or just because an agency, you know, has built one of your competitors' sites, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be perfect for you. You know, different businesses have completely different ambitions, and just because one of your competitors has used another agency before, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to deliver a great project for you personally. So I mean, firstly, just be completely honest with agencies that you speak to. I think that goes both ways as well. You know, if you don't like something about a certain agency, tell them. You know, not everybody likes everybody, and it's definitely it's definitely a personal aspect of things. You know, you're kind of seeing who you get on with. It's not all about the agency's experience. Agency experience is important, of course it is, but it's not exclusively about experience or, you know, caliber of developers or wherever it may be. If you get on with that agency really well, and that agency you can guarantee is going to stick their neck on the line for you and really get into the weeds of kind of what you guys are doing and where you want to go, and you feel like we said earlier are a true extension of your team, why wouldn't you work with that agency? What, because another agency is double the size? It makes no sense. And you know, think about that future roadmap as well. You know, is the agency capable of delivering everything that you need from start to finish? You know, I've just mentioned about agency size, but naturally there will be an agency size argument, because, you know, if you're kind of looking to grow from, let's say, 1 million to 50 million in, you know, sort of 3 to 5 years, when you start getting towards that 50 million pound bracket, you're going to need an agency with resource more than anything, because, you know, if that agency is managing a marketing retainer, you're guaranteed to be able to you're going to need at least somebody working on the account on a day-to-day basis. So, you know, make sure that the agency is set up for now, but also make sure the agency is set up for further down the line when you're reaching that sort of growth path.
Yes, I suppose it's about that planning phase again, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I think is so key. I mean, I guess, Ben, anything else you want to layer into that from an agency selection point of view?
I don't know. I'm be careful with my words. I guess I'm an agency cynic in a way, and it's only because I'm dealing with very large agencies. I feel that somewhere in the middle is a sweet spot, or an agency, as Luke said, that where you do have that touch against someone who's there with you, who's very real. Because I know from my own experiences, there are agencies who actually, when they got the job done, were getting it done by technically another agency. So yep. People who were doing your project weren't the people doing your project, and you could have cut out that agency completely and just talked to the people who really did it. And that was always a little bit disappointing to find out, but because of the reputation, or let's put it more like size, given as assumed as capability, there was a lot of people going to basing their decision on that for the agency as opposed to really what was going on. And I think you do want to be in that position where you can talk to the people, or at least know the people who are actually doing the doing on your project. That's the kind of level. And there might be a bigger agencies that can do that. So I'm not actually just slamming them all, because if you've got the right silos in team, you put that team together and that agency say, we can give you the team, and this is the team that's doing it. But that closeness to the people who are actually working on your project I think is important, because then also I think there's a lot kind of more invested in it for both parties there. Of course, if it's your store that you're wanting the agency to build, of course you're invested in it. But from the other side as well, a level of closeness I think is very good to have when you select an agency. And of course, again, I'll reiterate what Luke said. You need to have that kind of be on that same level with the people that you're talking to as well. If it's what feels off, or it's wonky, or it's not quite right for you, then yeah, it's pretty not right for you.
That's key, isn't it? Because I mean, I know particularly in the sales cycle that you and I will jump on calls with Luke where we're meeting potential merchants and things like that. And then I suppose similarly, I know we pull in the actual some of the delivery team. Actually, to be honest, quite a lot of the delivery and the discovery team are the same, and they'll work all the way through with the client. So they've got that relationship, and I think that's probably the thing I'm kind of taking out of all of this personally, is if I was to distill it down for people, it's about planning and the relationship of what they've got that really nails something down. They've got a full-on plan, full-on set of requirements on where they're able to go to, what the time frame is, what the roadmap is past that, what it looks like, what their commitment looks like, what platforms are going to be involved, when they need to sign contracts with different technology providers, and some of the other bits. Well, cool. All right. Well, guys, look, We've gone for 30-40 minutes there. We're just about up on time. So look, I really appreciate both of you taking the time to jump onto the pod this week. I know both of you will be featuring again in upcoming weeks when we kind of touch on some other subjects and things like that. If anyone does have any specific subjects they want us to cover in these podcasts, then please do feel free to drop an email to success@5874commerce.com or drop a comment in the chat box below. I'll get this part wrong, but I always try my best. If you want to subscribe, then you do something on Spotify and you hit the subscribe button. On YouTube, you hit the bell button, and off you go. We'd love to stay in touch with you guys. And yeah, thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.